Hey ExJWs, thanks again for stopping by. If you're new to the channel, my name is Riley and I used to be a Jehovah's Witness. I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Esther Friedman. Esther is a cult recovery counselor working with people who have left or are in the process of leaving a high control religious group. Esther works with many ExJW clients, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to get her onto the channel and speak with her about the benefits of therapy after leaving the Jehovah's Witness organization. Hi, Esther. How are you doing?
I'm well, Riley. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
It is my pleasure, actually my honor to, be speaking with you on this topic.
Great, great. It was quite serendipitous that we got in touch because I was looking for somebody to have on the channel to speak about therapy after leaving a high control religion like Jehovah's Witnesses. And just out of the blue, you showed up in my email inbox and I thought, wow, this is great.
Well, I thought so too, because as I said to you in the email, I always am wondering about other resources for my clients, and I do have, I have a small client base, but there's a pretty high percentage of witnesses in my practice right now. So I'm always looking for, like where else can they have support, company, camaraderie, things like that.
I guess we should start off by you just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do.
Okay. Well, my name is Esther Friedman. I'm an expressive art therapist, and I focus specifically on cult recovery because of my own crazy misadventure. And I will tell you that I think most therapists who are in the field have had some kind of an encounter, whether it's their own or a family member or, someone, a spouse. So I stumbled into something in 2006. I stumbled out in 2011 and became quite obsessed with the whole experience and how do these groups work and what the F happened to me, and in doing that, the funny thing is, Riley, I had a master's degree in therapy before my experience, and I found that even with the education, which includes, conversations about, making sure that you're not taking an advantage of a position of leadership, right? I still got sucked into this group. So I really needed to understand, how did I let myself get pulled into this rabbit hole? And I did this deep dive into the cultic studies, the Robert J. Lifton, the Steve Hassens, Margaret Singer, and kind of came out the other end. It was one facet of my own recovery, honestly, but, like so many of us do, we want to offer that to other people who have found themselves in these high demand groups.
Thanks for filling us in there with your background. Before we came on air, during our discussions over email and so forth, you mentioned that recently you've seen an uptick in ex-Jehovah's Witnesses seeking therapy. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's just been interesting. I found that, I don't know, maybe over the past 2 or 3 months, that more and more of the people who have been contacting me have been ex-witnesses, and many of them, I would say most of them actually, are either born and raised or second generation members, not first generation members. I do have a couple first generation members. I don't know why. I just find it kind of fascinating that there's this one particular group that seems to be en masse looking for guidance or, recovery or help. It's been organic, it's been random, but, they find, I guess, my website, or they'll go to the International Cultic Studies Association, which I assume of ICSA.
Yeah, ICSA, yeah.
I'm also on their website. So, I've just been noticing it, that's all. And I think I mentioned this to you in email, but there's this ephemeral, undescribable quality that I was trying to figure out before we got on here. I don't have language for it, that I see in, I think, every single one of those particular clients from the witnesses. I mean, just very
Mm,
sincere people, very kind, all brilliant, like have navigated, have gotten out of this group, particularly the ones, who were born and raised in, without a clue as to how to, navigate outside of the group, and they're all doing very well, so it's just really interesting to me to see the qualities that they share.
in your practice in treating XJWs, are there any particular facets of their cult recovery journey or their post witness journey that you see coming up over and over again? I mean,
Yeah.
for the virtue of being as Jehovah's Witnesses, they're going to have similar stories and similar
Right.
experiences. But are there any in particular that are quite striking to you? Like they all seem to suffer from this particular thing, or they all seem
Yeah.
to have this particular struggle. Is there anything like that?
Each and every one of them, I think the most heartbreaking part is, shoot, I forget what you call it in the witnesses, the shunning, right?
Mm,
Um,
hmm.
and being, is it excommunicated?
Disfellowshipped.
Disfellowship, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm grasping with the language a little bit, but the shunning is the most damaging thing. And that is across the board, whether they've left the group and experienced it from their family and friends or people that they've known all their lives, or they're anticipating it because they're in the process of leaving. That's the heartbreak that
Mm.
cuts the deepest.
What kind of negative impact have you seen on the people that you work with that they've experienced as a result of being shunned?
Oh boy, that's such a good question. I would say you have, as I said before, you have this group of people who are brilliant and creative and kind, and so resourceful and resilient, and they are the walking wounded.
Mm.
They just feel so fragile all the time, and they're mourning. They're in constant mourning. So lots of tears, lots of depression, very, very high anxiety. Definitely, I mean, I think I could slap the PTSD or the CPTSD diagnosis on every single client that I have, but it seems particularly true with the witnesses.
I can relate a lot to that. My experience of being disfellowshipped and subsequently shunned affected me in ways that I wasn't even aware of until, my partner pointed them out to me. Hypervigilance was one of them.
Yeah.
Um, Constantly, looking over my shoulder and not feeling settled, particularly in new environments. Is that something that you see in the people you work with?
Definitely hypervigilance, and also kind of a confusion about, I don't know if confusion is the right word, but there's this component of people pleasing and doing the right thing and not knowing how to refer in, like
Mm.
not saying, am I happy? But is this person okay? Is that person happy? Are they upset? What have I done? That kind of hypervigilance. I wonder if that's what you were referring to, or if there's a different
Um,
kind.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you. That's definitely a thing. I was, when I was speaking of my own experience, I was more referring to situational
Okay.
hypervigilance. But you're absolutely right. Witnesses are, it's literally drummed into our heads from the moment we can, speak, listen at the meetings, that we're
Yeah.
constantly supposed to put ourselves last. We're
Yeah.
constantly supposed to think about how our actions might negatively impact other people. Now, on the surface, that doesn't necessarily sound like bad advice. Nobody likes selfish jerks, who
Yeah.
don't care who they offend. But witnesses take it to the extreme.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're supposed to be the watchman of other people's consciences,
Yeah.
and it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. And I see each and every one of my clients carrying that burden to such a degree.
Yeah.
It's what Robert J. Lifton called the dispensing of existence. Like, I only exist in service to this thing.
Yeah.
And it's a hijacking of life. It's a hijacking of your time, your energy, your talents. And I mean, this is true of all my clients, but I do find that with the witnesses, it's particularly difficult. Like, I'm saying to them, look inside. Are you happy? What makes you happy, right? How do you claim your life for the first time? For many, born and raised,
Mhm.
first time, and they have no idea. And I'm like, it's life is short. Like, I'm really trying to kind of guide them to turn inwards. And I think, when I had listened to your story about leaving, and when you talk about meeting, I don't know if this is your current partner, but you met your girlfriend, and skipping down the subway platform.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what you want to steer towards, like things that
Yeah.
feed your soul, make you happy, make you want to skip down the subway platform.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, but you're right in your observation. I mean, a very, very common and well-known phrase in the religion is "good for nothing slave." We're literally told that that's how we should think about ourselves. And you will hear, I mean, the most hardcore of Jehovah's Witnesses, you will hear them refer to themselves in that way. They'll say, "I'm a good for nothing slave," and
yeah,
that's normal. That's the norm. Not only is it the norm, that's the standard that we're all supposed to be striving for.
it's so awful.
Mm, it
It's just
is.
it's so terrible. Like, it's such a terrible thing to, especially, for, I think you were brought in very young, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I refer to myself as a born-in because it's all
yeah.
I know, but technically I'm not a born-in. My mum started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses when I was 2 years old, and
Oh,
yeah, so I'm practically a born-in.
I think you can
Yeah,
consider yourself that because, now that we know so much about neuroscience and cognitive development, it too,
yeah,
that's your world, that's your
yeah.
universe. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a complete denial of self, a complete denial of self. And that's something that I struggled with after, not just after leaving, after waking up and realizing that
yeah,
my whole life I was following this religion that wasn't true.
right,
It was like, who am I now? You know, what
right.
do I believe? What do I think? What do I value? What are my opinions? It was like having to start from scratch, like from a completely clean slate, because all of those things were provided to me. Now I'm
Right.
having to figure that all out by myself, and it was a huge challenge.
Well, and I think that is the thing that's really hard to describe for those in the world who haven't had that experience. Like, this isn't, I left the group and I'm fine. you know,
Mm,
I realized it was BS and I took back my life. I mean, that's ultimately what you're aiming to do, is to take back your life. But this is a process, and especially again, brought in at 2 or, born in, it's a lifelong process.
yeah, yeah. Especially with a high control group like Jehovah's Witnesses, where your identity is so inextricably linked to
Yeah.
the religion, the organization, the community, the ideology. You can't really separate those things. So when
Right.
you're no longer a witness, you literally don't know who you are anymore. The
Yeah.
opportunity to be able to reinvent yourself and discover who you are is exciting, but it's scary as well, especially for an adult you know, losing
Yeah.
your entire worldview and having to navigate this world without a reference point.
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of things have you found has helped your clients to overcome those kind of challenges?
Well, boy, this is always a little bit hard for me to answer because it's such an individual thing.
Mm,
I'm very much Rogerian, I guess, which is a philosophy of psychology that's very client centered. I'm much more one to follow the lead of the client than to come in with particular exercises or ideas, right? And I actually think that when you're working with former cult members, it is really important to follow their lead. You know, they just got out of a situation where everything was controlled. But I think there's kind of in my mind a template, you know, and when you're talking about identity, I see any high demand situation as a hijacking of personhood, a hijacking of identity, you know. I think I try to turn it. I have a background in expressive arts therapy, so sometimes I'll use those modalities, you know. But I'll try again, you know, like kind of turning the person inward so that they can start to define themselves from the inside out, right? Like, what are the things that really make my heart sing, you know? What are the things that make me want to get up in the morning? And then things like principles. What are my principles? Because your principles were hijacked. Your beliefs were hijacked. What are my real beliefs? And, you know, what are the principles that I want my life to be guided by? Who actually do I want to be in this world? So questions like that are really, really helpful. And I think this is a slightly different angle, but I think also important, that coming to grips with the betrayal trauma, right? Like, you were lied to intentionally. And to realize that there are people in the world, many people who will do whatever it takes and say whatever it takes to get what they want and need, right? So there's also the component of like boundaries. And you are a separate person. The organization is the organization. You're your own person. And guess what? That means you get to say no. You have free will. You know, those are the things, again, you know, in any high demand group that are stripped away. But again, I see it particularly poignantly with my witness clients.
It's really sad as well. I mean, that's something that saddens me the most about the things that we as ExJWs go through. It's something that I feel particularly aggrieved about, that I didn't have the chance to be my own person. You know, sometimes I mean, I try to be as forward thinking as possible, but sometimes I can't help but contemplate who would I have been if I had the chance to develop on my own without that hijacking of my identity.
Yeah.
You know,
and you know, Riley, that is, I think, a normal and common question. You know, I hear it all the time. If you were my client, I would say, oh, okay, let's use this as material. Who would you have been? And can you take, I mean, obviously you can't go back, right? But can you take components of that and reclaim them or claim them for yourself? But yeah, I think, you know, I guess it's just it's evil. I mean, I have no other word for it. You know, it's just such a betrayal and exploitative, abusive practice. I don't want to go too darn far down the rabbit hole. If I'm getting too far off track, let me know. But I just think that the shunning, it's just the cruelest thing, and every cult has some version of it.
Do you have any experience of other groups that practice shunning in such a severe a way as Jehovah's Witnesses?
It's a good question. I mean, I think Scientology is very severe. I've heard some horrible stories. But I think maybe that might be the only one that comes to mind specifically right now. Because in both cases, you lose everybody. You lose, you know, your entire world. And these people can't talk to you anymore. It's just evil.
In terms of the ideology and the doctrine of the Jehovah's Witness organization. Is there anything that stands out to you as being particularly harmful, that you've experienced with your clients?
Well, I will tell you that the misogyny seems really, what's the word? Like, it's like cancer. It's,
Mm,
I mean, I've just, some of the women clients are just really suffering. They feel like slaves, to everyone else, right? So that, from what I've witnessed with my clients, might be at the top for me of like
right.
awful, harmful practices.
Just out of interest, what's the gender split of your clients, if it's okay to ask that?
Yeah, they're all women. What's really interesting, Riley, is most of them are in kind of alternative types of partnerships, you know.
Hmm.
Um, um, whether it's like, they identify as queer and are with someone of the same sex, or just have an open relationship, or like all the things that you are told not to do. Except I think all but one are in some kind of an alternative,
Hmm.
you know, partnership, for lack of better language. But they're all women. I don't have any male witness clients right now.
That's interesting. Um, do you, this alternative like kind of relationship, do you think that's indicative of anything in particular, or is it
I'm
just
not sure,
coincidence?
to be honest. I mean, I think there might be something to the fact that, you know, they've been told you can't do this, but I also feel like that's part of the squashing of personal identity. That's
Mm,
part of like, you can't be attracted to who you're attracted to, particularly if they're someone of the same sex. So somebody coming out of such a situation, part of their reclaiming of self, or maybe even the thing that spurred them out, was like, I'm actually not attracted to men, you know.
mm,
And some have been married and had children and kind of felt like, I am an empty vessel going through my day pretending to be a mom, you know,
mm.
because I was told to do that, um, which is a terrible feeling,
Have you ever had any ex-JW male clients?
I have not, no.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah, yeah. And this uptick is fairly recent, like
Hmm.
suddenly having a lot of witness clients is very new for me.
In terms of your other clients who are not ex-JWs, do you see any common experiences or common symptoms of their post cult recovery that kind of tie Jehovah's Witnesses along with other cultic groups?
I think with all these high demand groups, once you kind of rip back the presentation, that they're all the same. They all claim to be unique. They all claim to
Hmm.
be saving the world. Um, and behind that presentation, they're all exploiting people's vulnerabilities, their weaknesses, their strengths, So I think across the board with clients, whichever group they come out of, there's the betrayal shock of realizing, oh, this was all bullshit.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and then there's a lot of self-blame that I think is kind of across the board. You don't walk around through the world wondering if somebody's bullshitting you when you meet them. You extend the benefit of the doubt. That's,
Hmm.
for the most part, unless you're completely pathological, you kind of assume that, most people are well intended, right?
Yeah.
So there's this toggling between realizing that you've been lied to and deceived and betrayed, and then feeling somewhat responsible. Why didn't I see that? You know, and then I guess, with the clients that are born into these groups or, have been raised from a young age, there's just such a struggle around loving your family, your parents, but then also having some anger at them, that ambivalence and that struggle. And there's guilt is across the board, this guilt about having feelings at all.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're quote unquote negative. No, I don't really believe in negative emotions, but that is definitely exploited, that concept.
That's really interesting. When you say that, when you pull back the facade, all of these groups are pretty much the same. That's something that when I realized that was the thing that played the biggest part in me waking up to the deception of the religion. I'd already realized that it wasn't the truth, but I still had some kind of residual thoughts and feelings that it's still a unique group that do a better job of sticking to the Bible than any other. I still had that in my mind. I didn't see it as a cult. I didn't see it. I just saw it as a misguided group who think they have the truth, but they don't.
Yeah.
But then when I started learning about other groups like the Unification Church, the Moonies, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Scientology, when I started learning about all of these other groups and I saw so many similarities, it completely blew all of those residual thoughts and feelings out of the water. Completely. I could not believe just how similar these groups all are. And it just, I had this image in my head of like a big tree, a big cult tree, and each religion or organization is just a different branch.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's very accurate.
Yeah. Hey, Tears, thanks again for stopping by. I just want to quickly let you know about a protest that is taking place this year on October 31st in Washington, D.C. The aim of the protest is to expose the harmful practices of shunning in the Jehovah's Witness religion, as well as the widespread cover-up of child sexual abuse. The permit for the protest has been approved and it will be taking place at the White House. The organizer of the protest has set up a website called BeFree2023.com, so please head over to that website for all relevant information. And I'm going to place a link to that website in the description of all of my videos from today until the day of the protest. If you're in or around the Washington, D.C. area, it would be great if you could attend the protest. We really need your support.
That process that you just described, I would say for all my clients in my own experience, we went through a similar kind of trajectory, where it's like, oh, this is not right. Oh, this is bullshit. Oh, actually, they've been lying to me. Oh, but it's not a cult. Oh, but they do this thing, that this set of things that they do is exactly the same as Scientology. This is a really, really common, sequence of recovery of, suddenly realizing like there's a template for this. I mean, all I can say is that, it's human nature, I guess. It just gets hijacked and misused and abused.
When you're treating your clients and you see them go through that process, it's like there's different stages of waking up.
Yes.
When you see them going through that, what are some of the things what are some of the realizations that are most profound to your clients who are going through that multi-stage process?
Oh my gosh, you ask us good questions. Hold on, let me think about this. The realizations that are most profound, I guess, going back to what I said earlier, that one, that they've been lied to, but two, that there are people in the world who do this. You know, like you can't trust everybody. Like there's a kind of a loss of innocence. You know, like you know, that kind of childlike quality of thinking everyone's well intended, everyone's good. I think many times I've heard, and I've heard from my clients, and also seen, you know, in writings and heard in podcasts, the phrase spiritual rape. I think just feeling like the best in me, my best intentions, my wanting to be a kind, giving, generous person, was hijacked and manipulated and turned around. The realization of what gaslighting is, that's a biggie. You know. Yeah, this person is intentionally telling you you're not hearing and seeing what you're hearing and seeing, and so that you'll feel crazy.
That's something that really strikes a chord with me. I mean, my wife, who is the same partner that you referred to earlier in the video, we've been married 16 months now.
Oh, but, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. But she is extremely protective of me because I still have that childlike innocence where I naturally want to think the best in people and see the best in people. And for that reason, admittedly, I can be extremely naive when it comes to people and their intentions. And she's extremely protective of me because of that. But realizing that now, I actually feel, what's the word? Aggrieved, I guess. I feel really aggrieved that that side of my nature was weaponized against me. It was weaponized against me, definitely, not just by the organization, but by individuals within it. And it's something that really, really hurts because the religion's constantly teaching its members to be meek and to be mild and to always try to sue for peace and to be yielding. So I have a list of JW words that I absolutely hate now, and yielding is one of them. I was by no means a model Jehovah's Witness. I broke a lot of the rules, but those rules about being calm and mild and peaceable, I took those so seriously. I took them more seriously than most JWs I knew. And I feel that that's something that was exploited and used as a weapon against me. And I'm extremely aggrieved and angry about that because, you know, that added to my naivety. You know, it's like if you're playing a game against somebody and you're following all of the rules, but then they cheat and they're allowed to cheat. There's no way that you can win. You know, there's absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way that you can win. And I feel that that's the situation that I was in much of the time as a Jehovah's Witness, because I took those rules seriously about being, you know, always trying to keep the peace and being yielding. And I actually forego a lot of my personal liberties in order to do that, in order to comply with those principles. You know, and that's something that was used against me over and over and over and over again.
These rules, and this is true again, I think every cult, they are designed that way to make you more pliable, so that, you know, so that whoever is benefiting and profiting at the top can do whatever the hell they want, right? And think about like the sexual abuse happening in the witnesses. Those people do whatever the hell they want. They don't get, you know, they do the worst thing that you could possibly do.
And then they tell you that if you try to stand up for yourself, you're the bad guy.
Yeah. It's just this institutionalized gaslighting so that, you know, somebody some narcissist can be the top, on the top tier of the shit storm, the shit heap, and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
While, you and, your peers and your family, you give and give and give and give.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anger is the appropriate response. This is why I don't believe in negative emotions.
Yeah.
You should be angry. They exploited the best in you, your good nature. The you that like wants to be peaceful, that wants to be generous, kind. We need way more peaceful, generous, kind people in the world right now. So I would say, don't give up on that. Don't give up on your, I don't want to call it naivete. Like, you don't want to walk around cynical all the time, right? That's pretty miserable. Like thinking every person on the planet is trying to take advantage of you and is fucking with you and lying. That's not a happy life, right?
No.
But, knowing that, it just makes you a little more discerning. And, thankfully you have your wife who sounds like she's discerning.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. In fact, getting to know her was one of the things that helped me to wake up from my indoctrination, because just like you were saying, going around being paranoid, thinking that everyone's out to get you, I was the complete opposite of that, except when it came to non-witnesses.
Right.
Because the religion paints the scariest picture of the outside world. I know now that that's a tactic in order to keep you in.
Yeah.
But after getting to know my wife and, meeting her friends and realizing that there are some genuinely good people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses, that started the cogs turning. I was like, hold on a second.
You mean they aren't all evil? They aren't. Yeah. I mean, again, it's gaslighting, right? Like using a fear of the outside world, the us versus them, to keep you from living, from going out. And, thank God you got out of the witnesses, because you wouldn't have met this woman, but it came at such a high cost. And that's where I think, really, what could be worse? Why should you pay an interest rate your entire life because you fell in love with someone who didn't share your religious beliefs? You shouldn't. And yet I don't know, situationally right now, if you're in touch with your family or anything like that.
No, I'm not.
It's terrible. You can tell I'm so passionate about this. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's so awful. It's evil.
Very. The whole reason why I wanted to speak with you is because I've noticed that a lot of ExJWs don't seek therapy. Some, not necessarily because they don't want to. I mean, their circumstances may not permit them.
Yeah.
But I do think that ExJWs as a whole would benefit so much more if, where possible, they did seek therapy. So what could you just speak about the benefits of seeking therapy if you're leaving a group like Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, if we dial back a little bit to, how we were talking about your process unfolding, I think it's such a confusing process, and it's not something that not many people are really going to understand, because most humans, unlike me, are not completely obsessed with cults and cult recovery, and really, like, what are the mechanics behind this? What is the human nature that you're dealing with? So I think that just coming to understand that the things that you want in life most likely are not crazy. They're pretty normal. you know, and that you just happen to have an experience, and I'm using you kind of generally for this group, ex-witnesses. You just happen to have an experience in a group that purported to be kind and loving and guiding you through life while hijacking your personhood.
Mhm.
you know like if you can get the guidance and support that you need, and I think it would be very difficult to recover fully by yourself, whatever recovering fully means. Because honestly, Riley, um, any trauma informed therapist will tell you that we human beings, I'm trying to be careful not to use too therapy of a language, but if you don't understand what I'm saying, let me know. But we regulate each other, okay?
Mhm.
Like if you think of humans metabolically, we need each other to survive, right? So when you're being shunned, it actually feels like you're gonna die. You
Mm.
know, your youngest parts of you are like, I'm gonna die, I'm losing everything. It's this annihilation fear. Um, and if you as a grown-up can get kind of a intellectual and cognitive understanding and the emotional support that you need from someone who is either a cult recovery counselor or a trauma informed therapist, because this is the kind of neuroscience that trauma informed clinicians are learning,
Mm.
that you can start to realize that no, I'm not going to die. This is incredibly painful, but I can actually claim my life and live the life that I'm supposed to live and not be a cog in a wheel that's
Mm.
benefiting not me, you know.
Yeah. So
Um,
you've written a book recently. Could you just tell us about your book?
yeah. So the book is called The Gentle Souls Revolution, and it definitely came out of my misadventure. But for me, I stumbled into my cult as a grown up, that who was not adulting very well,
Mm.
and I came to, after I left, and I was doing this kind of deep dive into cults and why did I let this happen and blah blah blah. Just I've developed a profile that I've called the Gentle Soul, and this is a profile of person that I feel is very easily yanked around by the world. If you are empathic, if you're kind, if you are the type of person who it sounds like you are, Riley, you extend the benefit of the doubt first. Um, and so I kind of, I talk about my experience. Let me see if I can describe this accurately. Okay, it's it's got aspects of memoir, my experience, but then I also in each chapter include, and then I left the group, and this is what I learned when I started falling into the rabbit hole of research and talking to other former members and things like that. And then there's a section on recovery. So here are the things that help me take this template, personalize it for yourself because it's got to come from you, you know, um, and try to use these tools to always refer inwards and start establishing your boundaries, start getting a sense of like, what is it that I need to refresh my batteries every day? For
Mm.
example, I'm actually like naturally introverted, so I need a lot of alone time, So that's something you don't get in a cult, right? So, as an example, like in the morning when I get up, I'm like, nobody talk to me. I'm protecting this time. It's mine. I'm going to go play my guitar or write in my journal and drink coffee and think deep thoughts, for, 45 minutes. So, um, so what I'm really hoping it's kind of like, a guide as to how to recognize these red flags and how, as someone who's what fits this profile of gentle soul, how you honor that um, personality type. Because I will tell you that you know, my vulnerability is that I grew up as somebody who was really empathic, but being told all the time I'm too sensitive, right? And I think too
Mm,
much and blah, blah, blah. So I was into my, look, I was in my late 30s, early 40s, where I was like, I just don't know how to do this life thing because I had absolutely no confidence. So what happens?
mm,
I find a cult, right? You know, and they're happy to tell me how to live. So
mm,
coming out the other side of it is actually, no, I'm going to honor the strengths that I have. You know, I think we need more empathetic people in the world. I also feel like we need more people who listen and don't yak at you. Um, I think we need a lot more kindness. And I'm also going to pay attention to when I feel like I'm being drained of energy, because at that point, something's going on that's unhealthy, and I need to, you know, set a boundary there, and be like, man, maybe not. So I kind of hope to package all of that together in this book. And it really is billed as a cult recovery book because it's, you know, it's based on my experience and what I learned from it.
that is absolutely fascinating. Um, within the Jehovah's Witness organization, I hate calling them a religion. I avoid it as much as I possibly can. But within the Jehovah's Witnesses, there is absolutely no scope whatsoever for different personality types,
Right.
like what you've just been describing. Like, for instance, it's mandatory that all baptized Jehovah's Witnesses go out on the door-to-door preaching. It's not optional. You have to do it. For
Wow.
somebody who has social anxiety or for somebody who is extremely introverted, that is their worst nightmare.
Absolutely.
But there's no consideration for people who don't naturally. I mean, I don't think anyone naturally is adept or comfortable with doing that kind of work. But for
Right.
people who have an extreme aversion to it, there's no consideration or leeway for that whatsoever. And it's almost as if there is a set personality type, and anything different from that is viewed as either deviant or divergent in some way.
Right.
So
Yeah.
everybody has to try and conform to this plan. And for a lot of people, it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, look, you're just foot soldiers, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, and this is where I think it's identity hijacking. I mean, I call it cultic identity theft. You know, there is no
Mm,
room for you to say no to basically what is door-to-door sales, right?
yeah.
Where,
Yeah.
you know, if you're at all introverted or, you know, don't like confrontation, I mean, I can just see that being terrifying, right?
Yeah.
um, and you can't say no to it, and if you push against it, then you're, you know, transgressing against the group. And again, Riley, every cult has some version of recruitment, right?
Mm.
Now, not as extreme. I didn't have to go door to door for my group. I was supposed to be talking to everyone I saw at the grocery store and, you know, the CVS and all that stuff. You know, far more mild.
Mm.
But there's always this cloud of guilt about, like, you know, I was like, I actually don't want to fucking be doing this. Like, I don't feel like talking
Mm.
to this guy behind me. I don't care if he's, you know, got the, you know, he's going to solve global warming if only he gets with our group, right? That kind of a thing, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, um, I feel like I'm going off on a tangent, but, you know, look, it is about claiming personhood, yourself. The
Mm.
recovery
Mm.
is about that. It's like, you know what? I don't want to be a cog in the wheel, and I never did want to go door to door. And guess what?
Yeah.
Now I don't have to. So,
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because I absolutely hated the door to door preaching work. Not because I'm an introvert or anything like that. I just absolutely hated it. I found it a drag, a chore. I didn't like it at all. But my way of reclaiming that part of my personhood now is to speak to everyone, to find any excuse to speak to people, because now I can do that on my own terms and I don't have an agenda. I just speak to people just for the pure enjoyment of it. Because as a Jehovah's Witness, you're only really supposed to voluntarily associate with people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses when you're trying to recruit them.
Right. Yeah.
When, we were taught to be extremely friendly, kind, and caring, but recruitment was always the end goal.
Right.
It wasn't just for the sake of it, just for the sake of being a good human being. It was because you're either trying to actively recruit them, or you're trying to recruit them by virtue of your example. They'll see, oh, this person's such a kind person. I wonder what makes them so kind. And then eventually you see where I'm going. So now I actually enjoy the fact that I can speak with people and converse with people and associate and hang out with people without having to have all of that going on in the back of my mind. And I really, really enjoy it. And that's my way of saying, I hated talking to strangers as a Jehovah's Witness, but now I love talking to strangers because I just love it.
Yeah. Well, can I tell you? And that is a perfect example of what I would call cult recovery. Like, first I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to talk to whoever I damn well please. And you know what? It's going to be really fun because it's on my terms. And then again, you're claiming your own relationships. Like, look, these groups hijack relationships. They hijack, and they bend trust, and for you to be like, well, I did gain some skills by learning how to be super friendly, but now I can use these skills for my own enjoyment of life,
Exactly that.
I really, that's just a perfect example of what the kind of things that I would, if I was working, if you were my client, I'd be like, oh, that's fantastic. How can you do that more? And again, that's something you came to on your own. But I feel like, look, I'm just, what's the word? I'm a facilitator, it's a collaboration. I'm asking questions. I'm saying, like, let's look inside of you and see where you want to go with this, with this recovery, this reclamation. I mean, I like to call it reclamation or claiming of, of your life.
That's a really good way to describe it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you this evening. Thanks for joining me.
Also enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much for the invitation out of the blue. And hopefully we'll be seeing each other in some cultiverse space at some point in the future. I got out or something.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the conversation that I had with Esther as much as I did. Please check the description of this video for details of Esther's book and also for her contact details. Therapy for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses is something that I'm extremely passionate about. It's something that I've benefited from greatly myself personally. So if you're an ExJW, regardless of how long you've been out of the organization, if you haven't already done so, I urge you please to consider therapy. Thanks again for watching. If you haven't already done so, please click the like button so this video gets seen by as many people as possible. And also, please consider subscribing to the channel with notifications so that you're alerted each time I post new content. Please proceed to the Jexit in an orderly fashion, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching to the very end of the video. If you haven't already done so, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you like my work and want to help me continue doing it, please support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Jexit_2020. And with that, I'd like to sincerely thank these very special patrons who make these videos possible.